Okay, so Mesma is a software and consultancy business, predominantly software, but we do lots of wraparound consultancy support as well. Our client base is, if I summarised it, I would say the education sector. If I really pinpointed it, it would be in further education and skills, which is the bit that sits more or less between school and when you might go off to university. But we work in the other bits as well. What we're looking for is how is government money used effectively in order to make sure children and young adults and adults are educated effectively. So what that means is that there's a lot of focus on whether or not those education establishments are doing their job well. And what they'll tend to wrap around, as most businesses would actually, what they'll tend to wrap around the education that they provide are various ways in which they check whether or not it's been doing well. So what we do is we provide software that helps them think about how do we check whether or not we're doing a good job. Probably, if I put it in two words, it would be it's Ofsted stuff. It's we play very heavily on ensuring that people don't see that as a fear factor. There's nothing to be frightened of with an inspection regime if you're good at what you do. So it's about saying, well, actually, how do we just be the best that we can possibly be? And when they come in, we're not worried about it. I'll try and do a short version of it because it's a bit like all of us now. It's a bit long, isn't it? Don't they get a bit long? So I spent 15 years in corporate business, and that was split between 8 or 9 years at British Airways, and then I moved over to work for Orange, now EE. I had the best time working for both of them. That was a combination of operational management, so I worked my way up. Contact centre, call centre in the northeast in particular were the two main areas they operated in, and then it moved into kind of change management and project management, which I was really, really interested in, and I loved it. And what I love about, one, the contact centre industry, and two, both of those businesses, is the sense of community that you are a part of in doing that. I really, really loved that. But I had a bit of a burning, I don't know what it was. I hate the word passions. I'm not going to call it that because that's rubbish. A burning desire. I wanted to work in education. I had a real thing about saying I want to work in education, and what I think I want to be is a secondary school teacher. And that would have been the worst thing I could ever have done because I would have been eaten alive and I'd have been rubbish at it. But I thought I want to do it. And the problem was, if I'm honest, I earned too much money. And I thought, well, I don't know how I'm going to have to go from that to a frontline teacher with no background and actually having to work my way through it again. And I was really lucky that I was in the right place at the right time. Through the usual odd route, I met and went to be interviewed at Sunderland College for a role managing their business-to-business provision, so basically their work-based type learning. And I happened to meet them at a time when they were thinking, actually, if we want to do this well, we need someone from a business background to come in and lead it. And I take my hat off to them because at the time I did that, that was quite unusual. And I don't buy into people, the government, who sometimes think business people are better at running public services and using public money than civil servants, for example, might be, because that's nonsense. But it just so happened that I knew quite a lot about what businesses and employers wanted in terms of skills development, and that's what Sunderland College needed at the time. So I did 5 years there as their Director of Business Solutions, and it was fantastic. I was offered an opportunity to set up a new software business with some really smart people, and I wasn't planning on leaving, but it was such a great opportunity. I thought I'll do it, and it was hideous and it failed, and I learnt a lesson in trusting my own instinct, but I don't regret it for a second. What I regret is I walked out, I flounced out, and I'll never do that again, and it's not something I'm proud of, but I did it at the time because it seemed like the right thing to do. And I thought, well, what am I going to do? I want to do some education stuff. Again, I missed it, and I thought, well, I'll go back to what I know, and what I know is how can I help businesses to work well with education providers and vice versa. So I set my little business up and I got a website, and 2 weeks later I got an NDA through on an email. I didn't even know what an NDA was. I had to ring my dad, and I signed a non-disclosure agreement, and it turned out that it was KPMG, and they were looking for developing a program which basically did what I'd set my little business up to do. So I thought, well, either compete with KPMG or you kind of think, well, it's best to probably get in and work with them. So I did 2 years as an associate consultant with them, which was amazing. They were brilliant because they expected and I gave them loyalty entirely during that period of time. But they also recognised that I would develop my own business because I wasn't an employee for them, and they supported that. They were brilliant. I'm still in touch with lots of the team that I met there and still work with lots of them actually. Did that 2 years later, was running my own consultancy business, sat in a room with one of my now business partners, and we were bitching about the fact that it was very cumbersome and paper-based to do some of these quality assurance processes. And I said, well, why don't we build something? And I rang the guy from the horrible failed software business, who was a brilliant technical developer, and said, should we have a go at building this thing? And we did. And that's how it came about. And at times it's been very tough over the past 5-6 years because we've been juggling day jobs and Mesma. But it's been fantastic. So that's it. I told you it would be a long career history, didn't I? Because we all have different bits of stuff now. We don't have the trajectory that I think lots of other, perhaps a generation before mine might have had, where it's very neat. But it's, I hate quoting famous people, but is it Steve Jobs that said, it's actually how you look back and you join the dots between the different bits. And I think that's what I've been able to do, is join the dots in a way that it's created something that's allowed us to, we're not one of one in our space, but there aren't many of us who do what we do, that's for sure. Okay, so short term, we still need a larger stake in FE and skills in terms of the number of clients in England. We will get that through the breadth of our product. So as the new modules come on board, then that will increase. We will launch very soon our first software product, which actually is aimed directly at the learner and not just the QA system. So we've seen a possible space and we think, okay, let's maybe head into that. So there's some work being done on that at the moment. But short-term goal, more clients in FE and skills, or the clients that we have picking up a greater share of the number of modules. It's a SaaS model, it's a software as a service model, so it's a one-to-many. So we have it, we host it, and they access it through a browser and login and so on and so forth. So our model works well. We need them to be using more of it is my short-term goal. My longer-term one, and I put that as kind of a year, 2 years, is most of our clients at the moment, not all, but most, are individual colleges, training providers, universities, etc. Where Mesma has its greatest value is actually for the inspection regime, because it's built to allow you to see lots of organisations within it. So we have some clients, some outside of the UK, where it's bought by the government and they use it as part of their, I'll call it an inspection regime, but it depends on who they are and how they do that. We would like more of that, because I think we add enormous value in that space. So in the next couple of years, I would like to see it being used in more countries to be able to support early education, early vocational and technical education, to be able to develop their quality oversight infrastructures in a way that I think we can do a fantastic job of. If Neil and Carol were here, they might say that what I should say is, actually at some point we'll sell it. We'll sell the business at some point. Maybe.
We'll see.
Yeah. Maybe. Because we love it and it's our baby, and that's dangerous in some ways, because you become wedded to it and sometimes you've got to be a bit more objective about it. But yes, that has always been on the radar, that we're not against that as a possible option. What we absolutely are not is a business which has set out on a course to say, let's just build this up in order to do that. But it doesn't mean to say that we're not open to that at some point. I'll go for something obvious but important to me. My children do. And the reason, in a very non-Miss Worldy type way, the reason I say that is there are things that I do now because I think I want my kids to see me do that. That kind of role modelling of how you want them to be. And there are at times ways I might think I might want to behave, or things I might not want to do. And I think I've just told my daughter that she should challenge herself and do something that frightens her. And now I'm about to do something that, say no to something that frightens me. And it makes me go, okay, I'm going to do it. And I'm going to be scared, but I'm still going to make it happen. So my kids. If I picked a group of people that inspire me, it would be the teaching staff in all of their different guises within primary schools. And in particular, the primary schools I work with in very deprived towns and cities, who, if people who work completely outside of education saw what they had to do just to get some of those children to be able to get to school in the morning, they wouldn't believe it. And whether or not we see that as the responsibility of a school to have to get in the car or walk to someone's house to knock on the door and get them out of bed because their parents haven't done it is a different debate. The bottom line is they do it. And to me, how they go about doing that, as well as having to then be in a classroom, and the sheer grief they get sometimes in what's expected of them, absolutely blows my mind. I think they're incredible, and I'm sure the bit I don't actually get too involved in at all is secondary education. At some point I will through governance, but I don't at the moment. I imagine theirs is just a bigger version of that. So that's who I kind of tip my hat to every time I walk in the schools and hear and see some of the things that I come across. I think they're awesome. Don't do it. Oh no. Absolutely do it. And there is all of the things you think are to be fearful of, you know, the basics of how do you set it up, and oh my god, you must have to be so clever. It's utter nonsense. It's really easy to set a business up. It's much harder to make it successful, but it's actually really quite easy to set one up. And if you can, and it's in your nature to do it, then I would say absolutely go for it. What I would say is know that you're going to be completely wrong about your targets and the speed of your growth. You'll think you'll do everything much quicker than you will. It'll take years and years longer than you think it will. There are times when it's really stressful, but actually the positives always outweigh the negatives. I've set up 2 now, and I'm a shareholder in a third, and I haven't regretted any of that for a second. I've learnt a lot, and I've probably got better at it over the years, and I still will keep getting better at it. But yeah, do it, definitely.